Hello, everyone, and welcome to Today in the World, where I talk about news from around the world and give you my thoughts. um, so, I briefly have mentioned in other videos how I hate world organizations, and boy, I have a good reason. They're horrible. Like every large governments, even like they don't even have to be worldwide organizations. Large governments, they they're, they're the worst. But even large groups that are like that, not really govern but advise countries, even like the UN, for instance, or any of those stupid world organizations that exist, I can't stand them. It's because of the way they act. For unelected people, they have way too much power in countries. And these are nut jobs who are dictating policy to Western countries, and it's ridiculous. And the worst was yesterday when I see this letter sent to Elon Musk about his fireside chat, I guess, with Donald Trump, and how it shouldn't be let on X, and how it's going to be harmful and all this other bull crap. And now it's suddenly that this interview's out, that it's on X. They're like, oh, that totally wasn't us, we condemn the guy who did that. And I'm sitting here and it's like, that's some bullshit, because that absolutely was you. And all I can think to myself is, these guys are just lying sacks of shit. Why any government official would want to be part of these organizations, why any government official is part of these organizations, boggles my mind. I don't think you can call yourself a conservative and join organizations like this. Especially leaders of countries that are part of these organizations is insane. I think it full on should be illegal if you are a leader of a country that you're part of an organization like this. Because these are not the people who should be listening to. They're insane. They're stupid. They're unelected. Yeah, I was scrolling through X today and I saw that the EU Commission or whatever disavowed him 24 hours after he sent the letter. And I just remembered that I really don't hate these people enough. These people who run these United Nations organizations or whatever other organizations that are out there like that. Like, these are horrible people. They're always trying to censor and remove freedoms from countries where they should have no authority. It's insane. And on Twitter, this was a post from E. Miles Chong about the media and how they covered the event. And oh my goodness, it's insane. All of them. USA Today, Trump rambles, slurs his way through Elon Musk interview. It was an unmitigated disaster. What else is there? Variety, after 40-minute delay, Elon Musk and Donald Trump hold marathon bull X session. Donald Trump and Elon Musk's X conversation took forever to start, then never ended, on Wired. AZ Central, Elon Musk's interview with Donald Trump was an embarrassing disaster. Reuters, rambling Trump, Musk interviewed marred by tech issues. Trump's interview with Musk devolves into yet another X catastrophe. The Independent, Trump repeats the same talking points during Musk interview, but the former president's lisp steals the show. The New York Post, Trump regales Elon Musk with familiar falsehoods. The Los Angeles Times, after a glitchy start, Trump encounters a sympathetic interviewer in Elon Musk. The Washington Post, Trump returns to X with technical glitches, softball questions from Elon Musk. The Atlantic, Elon Musk throws Trump a rally on X. Politico, Musk might be the only person Trump listens to on the climate. CNN, Musk tries to help Trump halt Harris surge. Oh my goodness, mainstream media, man, I know I shouldn't hate people, but what about if they're just evil, At what point should you be like, yeah, it's okay to hate that person because they're so evil? Anyway, that's I just wanted to quickly go over that. Then Sadly, as much as I hate going over the same news day in and day out, it looks like there's more news happening in the Middle East that I'll be talking about today. Also, the ex-Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Hasina, has been charged with murder. And it looks like Mpox is spreading. Okay, so we're going to start with Middle East. I'm just figuring some stuff out here. Hopefully this works. Looks like it worked. Okay, so yesterday we were talking about how Israel was unwilling, or sorry, how Israel was willing to attend a ceasefire, but Hamas did not want to have a ceasefire meeting, and so it's like, are they going to have a ceasefire with one party president? It doesn't really make any sense. Today, they're reporting that three senior Iranian officials said that not only a ceasefire in Gaza would prevent Iran from retaliating against Israel. So this Iranian official warned that Iran, with their terrorist allies like Hezbollah, would attack if Gaza negotiations fail or are delayed. And when you have Gaza who isn't willing to participate in the ceasefire negotiations anytime soon, it just seems like they are going to be delayed. And then it's interesting, because there's some stuff related to that, which we'll get into. But here we have the Parisian. This is a French newspaper. It leans right, and I thought it was interesting, because we have the United States who is always calling for de-escalation and how they would like ceasefire talks, and I don't know how willing Israel is, honestly. It's interesting. Hamas definitely is not willing. I think they feel like favor could swing their way soon. We'll see how that goes. Because there's also something happening that's related to this, and this is from. This was reporting from Axios that they reported that Blinken had postponed his Middle East trip. They cited two unnamed sources, and apparently Blinken was planning on stopping in Qatar, he was planning on stopping in Egypt, Israel, and possibly Iran. And on the same day he was supposed to visit Israel, but he doesn't. He now has approved a $20 billion sale of various military equipment to Israel, which is insane. Yeah, so instead of, I guess, his trip to Israel that was supposed to happen that day, he sold $20 billion of weapons, which is insane. That's a lot of weapons. And I don't. It's funny because where's Israel getting $20 billion from? So that's interesting, because this is the Tribune website that we're on here, and according to the Tribune, the U.S. government is also set to release $3.5 billion in military aid to Israel, which is part of a $14 billion supplemental package passed by Congress in April to bolster Israel's military resources during the ongoing conflict. So it feels like it's the U.S. paying Israel to buy weapons from the U.S. almost. Granted, 14 billion, that's not 20 billion, so there's 6 billion in there somewhere. But okay. Like when you're talking about numbers this big, it can be so hard to wrap your mind around sometimes. Even worse when you get into the trillions, but I digress. Anyway, while all this has been going on, there was reporting done that Iran has been fielding calls from Western leaders. They are hoping that Iran will avoid attacking Israel because that could escalate into larger regional tensions. Iran has asserted that it has a right to respond to the attacks. I kind of get where they're coming from in terms of national sovereignty. Like, you have sovereignty over your own nation. When someone violates that sovereignty, that's an issue. Anyway, I said yesterday, I'll say it today, I don't see how this escalation, how this tension does not end in war. I wouldn't even be surprised if it ended up in something larger than a regional war. Whether or not the Western countries get dragged into it is a different story, but there will at the very least be Western support for Israel and most likely Russian support for Iran. I honestly would not be surprised at this point if Turkey also supported Iran, which is interesting because Turkey is part of NATO. So, like, even now, you can definitely see divisions cropping up in NATO between the NATO countries and Turkey. Um, it'll be interesting to see how that does develop if we do hit a larger regional war in the area. And then lastly, there was one last thing I want to talk about happening in the Middle East. Right. The Houthis seized the UN Rights Office in Sana'a, which is the capital of Yemen. And I have an article from a Turkish paper. Now, the Houthis are a terrorist organization. I believe it was them who were attacking ships in that strait. And they have taken over a UN office. I very much dislike the UN, and I could almost find this humorous, except for the fact that the Houthis have kidnapped people. So apparently the kidnapping took place on August 3rd. Right here, yeah. Took place on August 3rd. And the UN staff had to hand over their belongings. They had to hand over documents. They had to hand over vehicles, office keys. I believe, like, the article was even talking about how they had to hand over furniture. Anyways, and not only were there these UN people who were working in this office who were kidnapped, but there were also the arrest of over 50 NGO workers and an embassy staffer. I'm always happy when we can get hostages back from countries. I always think that's a good thing. I also understand the people who criticize this line of thinking where that when we trade people who have been taken hostage, we are almost incentivizing hostages being taken by terrorist groups. While saying that, I do pray that these people are unconditionally released immediately. That would be fantastic. And until they are released, I hope they're treated well. Because this is a horrible situation for the families of the people and the people themselves. I'll reiterate, I don't like the UN, but the vitriol that I carry for the UN is mostly for the people at the top. I think that these people who have been taken, who work at these field offices, who work at these NGOs, generally have the idea of promoting and protecting human rights in mind, and I think that's a noble goal. I really hope that they find their way safely home. Then if we leave the Middle East and we pop over to Bangladesh, where they had reporting that the Bangladesh court had opened up a murder case into their ousted leader, Hasina. So when we were covering the Bangladesh riots, I talked about how after Hasina had been outed, that the protesters were demanding the military immediately open up investigations into the police brutality, into the killings that happened at the time. It looks like this is the promise that is being filled by the interim government, a promise that was made by the military at the time, because a court in Bangladesh has opened a murder investigation. It's the first case filed against the former prime minister, and it is with her and I believe 6 other figures in her administration over the police killing a man during civil unrest last month. This is a very specific case. I believe this was taken straight to the courthouse. And according to the newspaper, Hasina had been blamed because, let's find that now. Sorry, this is new to me. Can't find it in here, but I did see it somewhere. She had been blamed because she had called for strong action to quell the violence. Should find that in here because that's kind of important. Yeah, who had called for strong action to quell the violence for the police firing. And if you're telling me that calling for strong action to quell violence is sufficient to open a murder investigation, that's insane. There are a lot of world leaders in that case who should have murder investigations open against them, or even apparently assault charges filed against them. I know it's not necessarily a Western democracy, so it's unreasonable to hold them to those standards. You can hardly even hold Western democracies to Western democracy standards anymore. So anyway, I do think this is an insane case, especially when there are the authorities in Bangladesh who are doing absolutely nothing, while Hindus, mostly Hindus, but some Christians and Buddhists are being killed while they have their homes burning. But they have time to do this. I feel like if you're the interim government, the first thing you should do is to quell the violence, and it does not look like the violence has been quelled at all. You know, like, you gotta stop the killing. You gotta stop the burning of homes. You gotta stop the looting. And I know it's not the interim government that's technically doing this, it is a court. But, like, if this is just a murder case that's based on her calling for a strong response, this should be pushed aside to free up courts for way more important things, because again, there's murders happening there, there's arsons happening there, there's looting happening there. Where are the police for those? Where are the courts for those? It's insane. It feels like this is like a quick way to hold over or to uphold a promise you made, and even if these resources could be spent better elsewhere, and I think absolutely they could be spent better elsewhere. It can be tough reading about these things and thinking to myself, but this is what the majority of the population wanted. So, and then I'm just gonna talk about the Mpox outbreak in Africa, because that seems to be getting a lot worse. So, Sapo is a journal in Spain, and they're reporting that the Africa CDC announced on Monday that the continent is under a public health emergency due to the epidemic of monkeypox.